Hello and welcome to the latest episode of my podcast, The Pocket Stylist. I'm Lisa Talbot, and today we're going to be talking about eyewear. So I have got an expert to join me today. I have got Dan Scott, who is an eyewear specialist and stylist and also an optician. So Dan, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
That's right. This is going to be a really good podcast because I think glasses at the moment are such a prolific accessory. I think it's going to be great to kind of guide and inspire and help the listeners as well. But before we dig into that, just tell everybody a little bit about you, where you're based, how you got into this, just so they get a little bit of a feel, and then we'll dig into the whole conversation about glasses.
Yeah, sure. So essentially how I got into it is kind of interesting. So I actually used to have a pop band, used to tour the country. We had songs in TV shows in America with Grammy-winning songwriters. We nearly got signed by Ed Sheeran's management, which was really exciting, and had this really fun pop career. And then when we ended up splitting up to the end of our last UK tour, my parents are both opticians.
Okay.
And they essentially just asked, their dispensing optician had left to move with their family up in Ipswich. They're based in Herefordshire. They just asked if I would just help them out whilst I was in between things. And essentially it was around the August time. And my rent had just come up where I was living in Brighton. And so it kind of made sense for me to just move back a little bit whilst I was working out my next steps. And my dad said to me, he said, I know you'd never think of doing optics, Dan. It's too boring for you. You know, you're more creative than that sort of thing. But he said, look, well, I was thinking about putting you on the course, like to become a qualified optician. And if you don't like it, don't worry, you can leave it. But what you can do is if you do become qualified, you can do what's called locuming. So you can essentially be self-employed and work at different practices on different days, and essentially have a flexible career around your music. Because there's only so many jobs you can do where you say, right, I need to go on tour for a month and then for 2 weeks and things like that. So he said, well, if you can do this, you could essentially do a few shifts in Glasgow, play a gig there that night, and then go move on to Manchester. And, you know, he pitched it to me as this flexible career around my music. And I didn't expect to get into it. But obviously, in doing so, my dad could see that, you know, it's not necessarily initially my interest. But he started putting me in charge of choosing the frames, because I was like, Dad, your frames are a bit boring and, you know, so middle of the road, that sort of thing. And in doing so, kind of, I started to do research, you know, and I started to look up, you know, different cool frames, how they're made, different styles. Then I started to travel to these trade shows across the world, went to Paris and Munich. And it was almost just like looking behind the curtain and discovering this amazing world of creative eyewear. So then after traveling around the world, I ended up working for some really high-end opticians, and I did the locuming thing and started to work with different opticians across the country. And I started like essentially building this real passion, but also noticing like there's a common thing that I felt was missing, and that's like expert style advice that people can trust. Loads of fantastic opticians where you get a good health check, test the eyes, very good recommendations with prescriptions and things like that. But the problem with the dispensing optics course is that it is very sort of sciencey based. There's no real sort of style part of it taught. Yeah, exactly. So what I did was just before the pandemic, I went down to London to train as a personal stylist, to essentially layer on top of what I already knew with regards to styles, that over my years of experience of what worked for people. And essentially launched the Eyewear Stylist in about 2021. In June 2021, I got the space up here in Media City, Manchester. And essentially combining what my optics knowledge as a qualified optician over 10 years with my personal styling knowledge now, where I offer color analysis for clients, show them what suits their face shape and things like that. And so it's kind of been a unexpected journey, but quite an exciting one, you know, and it's taken me all over now. You know, I launched the business in September 21. I did the launch event, and then within the first month I was in the Financial Times. You know, I had like department stores asking me to do concessions, and it's been mad. Now I supply to Coronation Street, EastEnders. Just done my first lead actor in a major feature film in America, which I can't talk about specifically just yet until they've released it.
You've signed that whole NDA that you can't say anything about. Yeah, but do you know
Yeah.
what's really interesting? And you know what? I think glasses have come a long way, haven't they?
Yeah.
You know, you
Mm,
go back kind of, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago,
mm,
all glasses because you needed them to see whether you were
yes.
long-sighted or short-sighted. I remember my mum,
Mm,
she used to go every time to get her eyes tested, then she'd get a new pair of frames. But again, they weren't exactly exciting. Mum,
no.
they were quite kind of run of the mill. And I think,
Mm,
and again, but she wore them because she needed to, not because they were seen as an accessory. And I
mm,
think as the as the years have gone by and the traction's gone with it, there's so much more flexibility to also sometimes what the opticians offer, but the collections are small. We know that.
mm,
Even I
mm,
know when I go and get my eyes tested, I'm funny enough, the ones I've got on now, I've got Marc Jacobs on. The
mm,
last time I had my eyes tested, I asked them to put the same lenses back in the same frames because I didn't
mm,
like any of the other frames at that
yeah.
time. So then,
Mm,
but then I think what happens is at the moment, especially, glasses are just everywhere, aren't they? Every
mm,
woman from
mm,
glasses because they need to read with them or long-sighted, to
mm,
glasses that have no prescription lenses in, they're just wearing them as
mm,
glasses. So there is
yeah.
so much more visibility and attraction to wearing a glass as an accessory, as
Mm,
well as if you need them to see the screen like I do. I
mm,
think there's so much more. Have you seen things change over,
mm.
the past 5 years, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot. I mean, for me, the big thing with glasses is that I think sometimes doesn't get spoken about enough is how much of a source of self-esteem they are. Like,
Mm.
because if you feel less attractive in your glasses, then you don't want to wear them. And then people will go into contact lenses and things like that. And contact lenses have their place, of course. But what we essentially found was through the pandemic, because people were starting to go from in-person working to remote working, a lot of people continued that now with things like Zoom calls and things like that. That a lot of the contact lens wearers, due to the refresh rate of the screen on computer screens, your eyes don't blink as much. So essentially, they dry out that much faster. So in contact lenses, it's just a real nightmare. So you're finding a lot of that contact lens wearers suddenly wearing their glasses because of this. But then also, if you think about a Zoom call, we can't see how lovely your high heels are, your beautiful shoes, your nice
Yeah.
skirt that you have, whatever it may be. We can only see each other from the shoulders up. And so suddenly glasses were the main way you could dress yourself for any sort of like meeting during the pandemic. And so people have become a lot more conscious about the glasses options that they choose. In that sense, we've also, I think, just purely in terms of individuality, I just think in general in all clothes, I love how there's more and more advocates for dressing like authentically and being yourself. Whether one of my favorite people I follow on Instagram, Megan Jane Crabb, like she's amazing at just embracing, body positivity, stuff like that. Even men just kind of being more flexible with colors and things. And so Prue Leith, I was chatting to her about this at 100% Optical last year. Prue Leith actually used to wear rimless glasses. I think
Did
she's a
she?
perfect, yeah, she's a perfect example of someone that has gone from wearing something completely understated,
To
and
there.
actually, yeah, to there. Like they used to wash her out. There's an argument she said she looked a bit older then than she does now because now you see with a different pair of glasses, every episode of Bake Off, bright colors, poppy colors, so much that she's so known for it that she's now kind of essentially attached her name to an eyewear brand as well, a
Mm.
range called Prue. Yeah, perfect example of someone that's gone from thinking of glasses as probably just an optical tool or something that's go understated to embracing it and enhancing a personal brand.
I think that's so important what you said though, where you said about, authenticity and
Mm,
creating and having glasses that work for you. And I think, even I look back, I've got, and I know I've got big glasses, I've got a couple of big pairs, different colors, because I like that style. I'm a little bit
mm,
quirky. I like that. And I love the fact that they're comfortable. I couldn't have anything that wasn't
mm,
comfortable.
no.
But when I went to the opticians who, great health checks, all that type of thing,
Mm,
They said to me, "You are petite, you need small glasses." And I'm like, no, because that's not my personality. If you put me in
Mm,
something small and something potentially that's going to make me feel older than I am, I'm never going to wear them.
mm.
I wouldn't put them on
No,
my face.
no,
Whereas
exactly.
I have no problem getting my glasses out on the train, or when you're at a restaurant, because I love
Mm,
wearing them. I love the
mm,
fact of, you're right, how they create an accessory and that type of thing. Um, would you say that, I'm just trying to think from glasses perspective, you're so right again in what you said about being on Zoom, etc.
mm,
You think women now are, because glasses have become more, I suppose, as an accessory,
mm,
you find women now have almost embraced a little bit more creativity. They feel that because obviously I see it from my clients, but that they feel they can do something a little bit different, whether, like you said, whether it be a color, whether it be a style. Because
mm,
I see ladies now who go, Lisa, what color glasses can I wear? What style can
mm,
I wear? But do you
mm.
think they've done that, they've created more kind of exclusivity to themselves, but do you also think that style of glasses matters dramatically to a face shape, or do you think we can play with it? Sorry, that was a bit of a loaded question, wasn't it?
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that it's amazing how different a pair of glasses can make you look and appear. Just and probably more so than most aspects of kind of any other item of clothing that you wear, because it's your face, you know. So obviously, right now, if people are listening to this, I'm just wearing a very fine 22 karat gold plated frame, but with a very light brown grad tint in it. So it looks quite luxury, quite sophisticated, but also relatively understated. If I was to change into another set of glasses that I've got a really bold, like electric blue acetate frame that sends a completely different message about what my personality would be. I could quite easily change into another set. I've just got a classic black frame that's actually made from a repurposed vinyl record. So the front of
Oh,
the
that's
frame
perfect for you then, isn't it?
yeah, I know. That's why I loved it so much.
Yeah, but
But
there's a bit of a story behind them as well, isn't there? And that, I
yeah.
think, is again, and interestingly, I will put this podcast onto YouTube. I'll put it onto my YouTube channel
Okay.
because I think for you changing your glasses, people need to see. So if you are listening to this and thinking, what is Dan changing into? It is on my YouTube as well. So go and have a listen on there as well. But I think you're right. It's the story sometimes, isn't it,
Mm,
behind it? And again, what you were saying is we're remembered for so many reasons, whether we have orange shoes, whether we have a red coat,
mm,
but more and
mm,
more people now are being remembered for the glasses that we wear. Because even now
mm.
I can think of, a couple of people that I've seen on the telly, and immediately I go,
Yeah,
oh, I like their glasses.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. I mean, and certain people are specifically known for it now. I mean, imagine Alan Carr without glasses.
Yeah,
Like,
he looks so different.
so different. You could imagine Bono, like, without his sort of like blue visor and his fashion pints that he wears with his glasses. Again, he looks so different. Elvis Costello, like there's so many, like obviously Elton John's a perfect example of someone who's played with glasses ridiculously. But obviously loads of style icons and people that just really embrace it. I think you get the most out of glasses when you embrace it. I
Mm.
think what a very common thing, especially because the interesting thing with glasses is obviously for a certain portion of our life, there's a mixed number of people that require glasses to obviously see clearly, and other people that just have great vision. And what happens with a lot of people is once we get to 40, 45, the muscles in our eyes slightly weaken and the lens in our eye stiffens up a little bit. And we start to notice that our eyes can't kind of bend and focus for close work as easy as possible. Yeah, so people get their arms aren't long enough
And the
syndrome.
arms get longer and longer, don't they? Because
Yeah.
you think, I can see it there. And then it gets longer and longer until your arm is the wrong length.
Yeah, exactly. And so that sort of thing starts to happen. And then what people tend to go on this journey where first off they might get something, oh, I only need them for reading. So I'll get something basic and cheap and I'll pop them off and on, that sort of thing. But then they start to get frustrated with how often they're taking them off and on because we all have phones and screens and stuff like that as well. And then they start to think, right, well, I might need a varifocal. So I keep my glasses on so then I can see and down for reading easily without having to take them off and on all the time. But then suddenly, then in the middle of your face, and you're wearing them all the time. And a lot of people's inclination can be in terms of going into glasses for the first time is wanting to go into something that people won't notice. They're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, I don't want people to notice me in glasses. So they go something really understated. They might even go into rimless glasses and semi-rimless because they almost don't want people to see that they're on. But the problem with that journey is the fact that at the end of the day, we can all see that you're wearing glasses. And so you can actually end up aging yourself and washing yourself out a lot by doing so. And it's really after people started to kind of go past that and realize, wait a minute, I'm wearing them all the time. People can notice that I want something that's actually stylish. And so you actually look a lot younger and more trendy by actually embracing it at the point that you do go into glasses. And I think part of what helps you to build that confidence is seeing more people express themselves in their eyewear, doing things differently, like you said, on television, pop
yeah.
stars and things like that, just embracing the fact that they wear them. Tiny Temper and people like that, he's always got cool different glasses on and stuff. And
Yeah,
yeah.
because what's interesting, we've always been confident in wearing sunglasses. We
Mm,
always, if you think about it, we've all
yeah.
gone for a pair of sunglasses because it protects our eyes against the sun, but also it helps us to
Mm,
drive, blah, blah, blah. So we've never
mm,
really been backward in coming forward about wearing a sunglass.
mm,
Because even when you go to the airport on holiday, you always went, didn't you, to the
mm,
sunglasses
yeah.
hut and go, right,
Yeah.
let's go and have a look at the sunglasses.
Mm, mm,
But
mm,
actually, we're now learning that we can be just as creative and accepting, couldn't get that word out, and
mm,
accepting as other glasses. And I think now the fact that there are different places that you can get different
mm,
styles of
mm,
glasses,
mm, mm,
I think it opens up people's world. But I think having somebody like yourself who is specific, people
mm,
feel that they can, take their time to choose frames. You've got a different selection. Some of them got
mm,
stories, a bit like the old records, that type of thing.
mm,
I think people, bit like clothes. Listen, it's like clothes,
mm.
isn't it? If you've
Yeah.
always done what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always got. So if you've always shopped
Mm,
in H&M or I don't
mm,
know, Prada or Mars,
yeah.
River Island, you're always
Yeah.
going to get those clothes. But
Mm,
sometimes you need somebody else to say, have you thought of this
mm,
style? Have you thought of that
mm,
color? Have you thought of this?
yeah.
And then suddenly people go, oh, I like that. But
Yeah.
because, and this is no disrespect to any of the
No.
opticians, but their selections sometimes aren't as exciting
Mm,
that actually we're now being able to go, oh, actually, I can do this, I can do that.
mhm,
And it
mhm.
makes more fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many sort of separate things to talk about with regards to that. I mean, obviously, the difference for me is my reputation relies on you looking good in glasses because
Yeah,
it's specifically what I do is I style people. So if I style people in glasses and they don't look great, my reputation is not going to go too far. Whereas obviously, when you're a mass chain store and things like that, it's not. It's more just about providing you something you can see. It's not as
yeah, yeah,
tied to style. In terms of awareness that there are more options, I think a lot of people just can think of glasses as like there's the only sort of like black and tortoiseshell and things like that. Whereas there's part reasons are to do with obviously on the mass market if we're talking about that. And with mass production, they take less risks when they're producing like thousands and thousands of frames. So they tend not to necessarily produce as many creative and unique shapes, and certainly in terms of sizing as well. As we talked about, you tend to find on the mass market is a lot of petite women that miss out, and they get self-conscious that they feel like they have to go to the kids section and there's not loads of options and that sort of thing. Equally, a lot of taller men, because our head sizes are proportionate to how tall we are and things, and that struggle to find things that fit. So I think it's like initially having an awareness that there are so many different options. And I've got to admit myself, like growing up, even with opticians as parents, I thought glasses were a bit boring. There weren't much, but you're kind of reliant on what the opticians stock. There's a bit of a chicken and egg sort of situation. And I think the difference we have in the UK to other countries, like France, for example, is that in the UK, you tend to get quite often people get their glasses from the same place that they get their sight test.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Whereas in France, you go and see an ophthalmologist for your eye health check and sight test, and they get paid amply for what they do, and they give you your prescription. Then you go and choose where to get your glasses from. So it also creates a psychological thing of where should I choose my glasses, and you're choosing more on a style basis at that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Whereas a lot of the mentality, unfortunately, like you tend to find in this country, is do I need glasses like to see? Like, do I need a change of prescription? And only thinking them as like a scientific tool that allow you to see, rather than separating out the mindset of, oh, I'd actually like a new pair to kind of look a bit different, or build an eyewear wardrobe. So most people in France, on the continent Europe, I think it's something like they have 2.3 pairs on average per person, if you had to work it all out. And whereas in the UK, it's only really one. And what happens is if you had one pair for everything, what you end up doing is a lot of people go through this mindset, I need something that goes with everything, therefore logicalizing themselves black into black and tortoiseshell. Whereas once you have like various different pairs, you can be more expressive. And I do a lot of analogies with things like shoes. Like if you had to pick one pair of shoes for everything, both on function and fashion, how difficult do you think that would be?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's why, not being funny, people have a white trainer because they go, that's
Yeah.
fine. I can wear it
Yeah.
with everything. Do you know
Hmm.
what I find? I'm sitting here thinking, I don't also think that some people know that they can go to an optician and have
Hmm.
their eye health check or whatever check
Hmm.
they have, and that they can actually say, thank you very much. I've
Hmm.
paid you for my eye test and my eye
Yes.
health check.
Hmm.
I'd only now like just my prescription. I
Yeah.
think sometimes what they do is they think that they have to then they're almost obliged to go and get
Hmm.
their glasses from the opticians. But I think
Hmm.
once you learn that there are other ways that you can get your glasses, that
Hmm.
actually then, if you do that, because I've done it, because I know where else to get some glasses. I can
Hmm.
go, that's fine, thank you very much, but can I have the prescription? And off I go. And they go, yeah, that's fine. So then
Hmm.
you can go and choose the styles that you want if you want them a bit more quirky. I don't think
Hmm.
people know that you can do that.
Yeah, I think it's that's the thing. I think it's obviously it's going for the sight test to get your health check, which is really important, on top of obviously the visual checks of what helps you to see the clearest. But then it's just taking time over that decision. And it's like I don't know. Like it's imagining, I suppose, getting your bra fitted in a store and then thinking then you can only ever get bras from that
Fitted in the same
store when
store.
you
Yeah, yeah,
could,
yeah.
you could kind of go any because there's so many different things. Like, it's obviously just there's so many sort of like different subtleties when it comes to culturally, like with eyewear. I mean, even coming back to an earlier point of yours as well, like in terms of why are people more comfortable wearing sunglasses than optical frames? I think you've kind of got something in society where it's subtle again. But if you think about the amount of films and TV shows you've watched, how often is the nerdy character
Wearing
or like
glasses.
portrayed by someone that's wearing glasses? How often is it that this girl who previously seemed a bit unattractive apparently suddenly takes her glasses off and now she's the most beautiful
Yeah,
woman in the
yeah.
world at the prom at the end? There's all these subtle like things that are fed like culturally into the way that like the psyche of how people perceive glasses differently to sunglasses. People don't necessarily wear sunglasses. You go, oh, you're a nerd, like wearing sunglasses.
That's what we
You
said,
know,
wasn't it?
yeah, and so I think we just like need to kind of like change the way that glasses are talked about in the media and stuff as well. And just kind of change that and create a more positive atmosphere around it. Because it's a real shame, I think, where people feel self-conscious about wearing them. But you're right, in terms of just on the if we come back to the original point of prescriptions, it's knowing that I do have an option here. That's not the only thing that I have to do. And even if it's just, I just want to take time to consider it, I might still choose glasses from here, but I just want to have the time to have a think about what options there are available. I think that's a fair enough decision.
But then I think, like, from your perspective as an eyewear stylist, and then me as a, you know, kind of a clothing stylist as well, it's very important that everybody feels super confident in what they're wearing, whether it be their clothing or whether it be their glasses. You know, I think that's so important. Dan, before we finish, tell everybody just how they can work with you with regards to your glasses. And you've just swapped them. Oh, I like the pink tinge onto those.
Thanks. I know I've been doing loads and loads with fashion tints recently. Like, I think just because people don't think, this is the interesting thing with glasses as well. A lot of people think of glasses as just a frame. And then they think the lens is just whatever you put in there. People don't necessarily know the amount of amazing creative things you could do with lenses to completely transform how that piece of eyewear works. Whether that's like my client today, I did him in some red flash mirror photochromic lenses, so into his red frame. So the reflection of the coating goes nicely with the red. When he steps outside, the lens turns into a red mirror sunglass from being clear indoors. And there's so many sort of like subtle cool things. This same frame with a clear lens would look completely different.
Completely different, wouldn't it?
Yeah, just by putting a light fashion tint in there. And these are the things that people don't always think about or necessarily know how to do about. And then it's where you can come in as a stylist and give those fashion advice. Probably like you've done with a lot of your clients with clothes, said, have you thought about this and suggested this, and just pointing them in a different direction. Go, God, I never even thought about that as an option. And when it can work really well, and communicate a complete different message. But in terms of how people work with me, my website is simply theeyewearstylist.co.uk. I do a lot of stuff on Instagram, which is at eyewear_stylist. And people either come see me in person in my studio in Manchester. It's about a 90-minute appointment from start to finish. Or I do pop-up events. You know, I sometimes will come down to London. I've been doing it at a styling day in Surrey last week. So I sometimes mention those on my social media where I'm doing a pop-up event. But I also do online styling advice sessions. It's about half an hour with me, which you can book in. It's only £49 for half an hour, just to get advice and, you know, neutral style advice on what styles of glasses would complement you, suit you, work best for you. Can give advice on sort of brands, on qualities, on prescriptions, on lens options, things like that. And so that enables me to help people all over the world. So if anyone's listening to this podcast, I've done, you know, things from Australia, America, Nigeria, people all over the world to help support you in finding glasses that suit you, because that's my real mission, really.
And I think that's brilliant. And that, you know, even I'm sitting listening to you as a stylist, I'm an expert in my field. You know, for women's styling, for all that type of thing. But I'm not an expert in, like you just said. I can say to people, this is the kind of frames I would recommend about being authentic, blah, blah, blah. But where you just said, look, I've just done the red tinge and this is one's got a pink in it. That's not my expertise. And I'm a massive believer in that we work with the experts in their field, because then you get the greatest results. And that's where it all comes together. Right. So I think we've talked enough about glasses today. But honestly, anyone who's listening to this, please go along and have a look at my YouTube. You'll see where Dan has swapped his glasses over as we've been doing this podcast. Go and have a look at his website and have a look at his Instagram. Do you do TikTok?
Yes, we've got TikTok. It sounds more long-winded to say out loud, but it's basically Dan the Eyewear Stylist, but separated by underscores. That's why it's Dan _ Eyewear _ Stylist. It sounds really long-winded.
That's fine, because obviously from a visual perspective, that I think that's really good as well. So Dan, thank you so much for spending the time with me. It's been brilliant talking about glasses. I hope everybody has enjoyed the podcast today. Something a little bit different, but something incredibly important about glasses and how we can wear them according to who we are as people. So I love that. Thanks to everyone for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you all next week. Thanks ever so much. Bye-bye. Bye, Dan.
Bye.
Bye.